Hi all. Welcome to my video. My name is Jennifer, and today I will share my personal story of recovery from major depression with you. If you are suffering from depression, I hope that my story and tips on treating depression will be helpful for you. If you are not suffering from depression, or you would like to learn more about the illness, feel free to stick around too. Whatever the situation, I am glad to have you here listening to my story and the way I overcame major depression. Let's start with my story. I first experienced major depression when I was 18 years old. I was raised in a loving family, as my parents and siblings adored me. However, this did not mean I was free from the hardships of life. The unfortunate fact is that everyone faces hardship every day. And for me, the hardships of life just got too much, eventually resulting in my diagnosis of major depression. As a child of parents who have high hopes for their children, I have adopted a perfectionistic attitude into the way I see myself, others, and the world. Whatever I do, I wanted to be the best. For instance, I wanted to achieve all A's in class, I wanted to be popular, I wanted to be liked by everyone. Basically, I was being very hard on myself. Whenever I got a B at school, instead of being grateful that I passed, I asked myself, why did I not get an A? I was also naturally shy and introverted, and so it was hard for me to make friends. I asked myself, why couldn't I be as popular as others at school? Why couldn't I just be someone else that was better? One of the worst decisions that I made was being ignorant and denying problems about my mental health. Despite feeling unhappy most of the time, crying some of the time, and feeling hopeless, I convinced myself that I have no problems, and all I need to do was try harder. I told myself, eventually things will change as they always will. I didn't realize that after high school graduation, my problems only carried on with me to university. Things did change for me in university, however, for the harder. Life became harder. I needed money to pay my college tuition, I have more responsibilities as an adult, and I just wasn't ready for it emotionally. Instead of relaxing and telling myself I would take it step by step, I told myself that I was such a disappointment and that I needed to do better. I also told myself I was ashamed that I couldn't handle things. Things began to spiral downward, until I found myself crying frequently. My grades started to suffer, and my perception of the future was clouded with negativity and hopelessness. Sometimes, I also felt a sudden burst of intense fear and hopelessness for no reason. The symptoms of my depression became stronger, and my parents and siblings became concerned about my well-being. I was told to see the campus doctor, and so I went. It was at the doctor's clinic where I was diagnosed with major depression and panic attack. When I was diagnosed with major depression and panic attack, the first thing I asked myself was, what was this illness? I didn't know much about this illness. How could this illness happen to me? Since our family didn't know much about mental illness, I assumed that you could miraculously recover from this illness if you took antidepressants, just like the common cold. I was prescribed antidepressants from my doctor, and so I took them. I assumed that my illness was now cured, because I took antidepressants. I did not feel happy, but I was stable enough to be able to start working on university work again. I functioned okay for a couple of years, as I managed to graduate from university. After graduation, I started to reduce my antidepressants. I noticed that when I reduced the antidepressants, the problems came back. I started to have the same panic attacks again, and the same kind of low mood, helplessness and hopelessness. How could this be? I asked myself. After all this time, did I just waste my time? I resolved to stress myself harder and I ended up needing to take a higher dose of antidepressants. At that time, I did not understand why I ended up needing to take a higher dose of antidepressants. But now, I understood that it was because I was putting more pressure on myself to recover and talking to myself negatively, which resulted in lower moods. After another couple of years of being okay and functioning fine, I began to feel that my depression was coming back. Why? I asked myself. I have been taking these medications and yet my illness just got worse again. It was this last episode of depression that made me realize I need to change and not just rely totally on antidepressants to help me recover from major depression. Now, antidepressants are extremely important for anyone with major depression. I believe that anyone with major depression should take antidepressants as instructed by their doctor, and I definitely did not endorse coming off antidepressants until you discussed it with the doctor. But I believe antidepressants can't totally cure the root cause of depression on its own, as I believe depression is caused by a combination of factors. For example, major depression can be caused by a combination of factors, such as your past experience, your personality, the way you talk to yourself, the mental habits you have, the family dynamics, the resilience you have, and so forth. I didn't believe one factor was totally responsible for major depression. At least, it wasn't in my case. After a few depression relapses, I finally decided to try all kinds of ways to treat depression and prevent future relapses. Now, I will talk about what works in improving my mood and preventing my depression relapse. I have tried all kinds of ways to treat depression, and since I believe my depression was caused by a variety of factors, I believe there is no one-size-fits-all method. I believe each method contributed in a good way to help me recover from depression. It was important to point out that persistence was the key to recovery. I could say this from experience. I have a couple of near-depression relapses when I gave up some of these methods due to lack of time, motivation, and boredom. So my most important recommendation is to not give up on your depression recovery journey, and no matter what, as you will definitely make it through and find yourself feeling better and better along the way. There may be times where you feel you are not progressing or going backwards, but trust me, as long as you keep trying to recover from depression the right way, you are making progress in the longer term. After all, the process of recovery from depression is rarely linear. There will be some bad days and good days, but if you do it the right way, you will start to find yourself having more good days and hopefully achieving more. Now I will introduce my 10 ways of recovering from major depression. The best way to treat the root of depression was to incorporate all 10 aspects into your recovery plan. The first aspect was to take antidepressants or vitamins as prescribed by the doctors. Although I did not like the side effects such as weight gain in my case, the antidepressants were very helpful as it reduced my symptoms of sadness and hopelessness. The antidepressants balanced the serotonin levels in my brain so I could function properly again, and I felt less anxious and sad. I felt like my distress levels reduced so I could concentrate better on my work. The second aspect was to choose food that were beneficial for me. I noticed that when I ate more healthy food, I tended to feel better and more energetic. Whereas when I ate junk food, I tended to feel good in the short term but unproductive, less energetic, and unhappy in the long term. This came slightly as a surprise for me. I knew that 5 servings of vegetables and 2 servings of fruits were important for my physical health, but I didn't know that they were that important for my mental health. From my experience, it turned out that food and vitamins were also very important for treating depression. In fact, I took some fish oil along with my antidepressants, and I could feel a difference when I took them. I felt better, happier, and more energetic when I took fish oil with my antidepressants. For me, fish oil and my antidepressants did not clash, but if you were considering to take antidepressants with fish oil, be sure to ask the pharmacist or the doctor before taking them. The third aspect to treat depression was to exercise as often as I could. Everyone has been telling me that exercise was good for mental health as it boosted your endorphins, also known as happy hormones in your brain. But for me, I felt that it wasn't enough to cure depression alone. For some people, exercise may be able to cure depression on its own, and if this applies to you, I am happy for you. Congratulations! As for me, after I spent time in the gym running on the treadmill, I really felt better after exercise. However, the effect only lasted for a few days. When I did not exercise due to lack of motivation or other reasons, I began to feel sadder. So I suggested the best thing to do was to incorporate exercise into your routine. You didn't need to run the marathon, sometimes just stretching and doing 5-minute sit-ups could help. These mini exercises can make a huge difference to your mood. The fourth aspect I did was to do meditation. My therapist once told me that the more meditation I do, the clearer my thinking will be over time. At first, I wasn't taking what my therapist said seriously, as I thought, how could a 5-minute meditation help my thinking be clearer over time? But it turned out meditation did help. I became more aware of my depressive thoughts. I became aware and closer to the root of the problem, and that made me felt relieved. Meditation not only helped my thinking be clearer over time, but it also helped to calm me down and reduced my feelings of unease and anxiety. After meditation made my thoughts clearer, the sixth aspect was to inspect my thoughts for unreasonable negativity and challenge them. At first, the depressive thoughts were overwhelming, as they were so negative and strong. However, I started to tame them with my favorite method, affirmations. Whenever my brain told me thoughts like I should be harder on myself, I am not good enough, I need to be better, I told myself I don't need to be harder on myself, I am good with myself, I am good enough, and I am better already, so I don't need to do more. I don't need to criticize myself. I don't need to treat myself like this. I can and will treat myself better. I will also mention that it is important to keep practicing positive affirmations, as from my experience, I did start to believe in these positive affirmations over time and I felt they did rewire my brain from negativity to positivity. The difficult part of treating depression was to always stick to the treatment plan. It was extremely important to stick to the treatment plan and not give up halfway. It was incredibly hard, but the process of recovery was so rewarding at the same time. Also, sometimes when I became too overwhelmed by my negative thoughts, I told myself I am having these negative thoughts instead of owning them as my voice. I told myself these negative thoughts were not a reflection of who I am as a person, they were a reflection of my illness. The seventh aspect of depression was to talk with a therapist, counselor, or psychologist. Sometimes I was so used to the negative thoughts within my brain that I couldn't see the problem. For example, I was so used to the thought I should just try harder that I didn't realize that I was being too hard on myself, and it was hurting my self-esteem. So it was important to tell your therapist, counselor, or psychologist your problems so they could offer their opinions. Sometimes a different perspective was all I needed to change my mental habit. The eighth aspect of treating depression was to write down all my beautiful qualities that I could think of and their evidences in reality. Then, I put them up on the wall, and whenever I felt truly sad, unhappy, and about to criticize myself, I looked at all the precious qualities I have on the wall. For example, I wrote down that I am a caring person, because I personally felt that I cared about my friends, and one of my friends had told me that I was a caring person. I also cared about the well-being of my next-door neighbor's cat. When my neighbor's cat went missing, I was worried and helped to look for it. So these facts were evidences of the caring quality that I have within me. After I looked at this list, I told myself, how could I treat someone so caring like this? I shall treat myself better. Sometimes, my mood would be so low that I still wasn't convinced about the positive aspects of being me. In that case, I reminded myself, how would my precious one see me? How would my cat see me? How would my friends see me? Usually, thinking these thoughts would help me feel better and change the direction of my thinking. However, if I still wasn't convinced, I reminded myself of the truth. The truth was that I am valuable. Despite the latest technologies, science hasn't been able to recreate the exact same person as me or you. No human being can create the soul and emotions that live within me or you, or anyone else. Doesn't that indicate that you and I are of irreplaceable and incredible value? Of course it does. I am so precious, and I am much more valuable than gold. The ninth aspects that I used to treat my depression was to keep focusing on the positive side of life. One way to keep my mind anchored on positivity would be through creating a gratitude diary. Each night, before I go to bed, I read through the previous entries of my gratitude diary and give myself time to feel grateful after writing an entry. For instance, I told myself that I was grateful for still being alive, as I could still have time to do the things that I love. Even if the situation was unbearable and difficult, I could still have hope, and I am grateful for it. Finally, the 10th aspect to reduce my depression was to reduce stress caused by being unrealistic. Let's face it. If I have a serious physical injury, I don't think I am likely to run a marathon just as fast as the other athletes who are perfectly healthy. Comparing myself like that with others just wasn't fair to me, because we are all valuable in our own ways. Instead of complaining why I wasn't as good as others, I told myself that I was mentally injured and that I shouldn't expect myself to be as mentally efficient as the others that I am constantly comparing with. Rather, I can work on setting reachable goals if I want to improve my mental efficiency. Setting unrealistic goals only stresses me out and lead to unproductivity. What I am saying is that miracles are still possible. It is definitely possible for you to still be mentally efficient than others with no or less severe mental health problems, but it just requires more hard work, determination, and effort due to the circumstances you are in. Also, I wanted to clarify that while it was important to be realistic about your progress, it is also very important to be kind, loving, and compassionate to yourself. I learned this from my therapist. I have a habit of being too perfectionistic and hard on myself. I often forget that I am just a human, and as human, we all need compassion and understanding. This is our nature as humans. While it is important to be realistic, it is also important to be kind to yourself, because this is a difficult world we live in, where we face a lot of hardships every day. So that's all the tips I have for you today. For me, I felt that all 10 aspects were important for my full recovery. Even though I am still taking antidepressants nowadays, I have felt a lot better in the long run and felt that I was being productive. I am making progress every day, and I am proud of myself. Was this video helpful for you to understand major depression? Or if you are depressed, does this video help you? I hope it did. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Wish you all the very best. See ya.